In this chapter, we'll finish our review of the editing tools, and then we'll explore the audio menu. The objective with this chapter is to make sure that you're aware of the tools and resources available and how to use them. By the end of the chapter, you should have a solid understanding of group editing via folder tracks, group editing using the click and pick method, the sample editor toolbar, the audio menu and its submenus, DC offset, what issues it can create, and how to solve them. We touched on group editing in the quick start videos. Group editing allows you to edit several tracks at once as if they were one track. Place all of the tracks you want to edit into a folder, and you can do this by selecting the tracks, then right-click and select Move to New Folder. Then you have to activate group editing. Now, one obvious application for this is editing multi-track parts like a drum kit or layered guitars. Group editing applies to selecting events, moving and duplicating to include audio quantize, resizing events, fades but only for audio events, splitting, muting, and deleting. Remember that Group Edit also works with a mix of track types. Let's use Group Edit to split these tracks. Notice that the edits are applied to the MIDI tracks, audio tracks, and instrument tracks simultaneously. Now, if we switch our snap mode to shuffle, we can reposition the events to experiment with different arrangements. You can also use the Group Edit function to lock events. Locking prevents you from accidentally moving or changing an event. You can adjust the locking behaviors using the Preference menu. Now, one last note about group editing. You can apply Group Edit without having the events in a folder track. You can select individual events using Command-click, then select Group from the Edit menu. Grouped events are indicated by a group icon in the event. Now, if you edit one event, all the other events in the same group are affected too. Let's look at the tools available in the part editor. First, double-click an audio part. The toolbar here is similar to the toolbar in the project window with a few exceptions. For convenience, the editor has its own solo, play, and loop controls. The line, glue, and color tools have been removed, and there are separate icons here for speakers and scrub function. Finally, you have tools to select which parts are active for editing and tools to make them easier to see. Just like the project window, you have access to snap, auto scroll, and zero crossing functions. The sample editor provides the most sophisticated editing capabilities. This is really the heart of the audio editing capabilities in Cubase. The toolbar contains most of the same controls as the other editors, along with a musical information section to the right, which becomes important in musical mode. The most powerful tools in the sample editor are found in the inspector to the left. We'll cover Vary Audio, Hit Points, and Audio Warp in depth in other chapters. You can use the sample editor to click, change, and drag the snap point. Simply drag the S to the location where you want Cubase to grab hold when applying snap. As its name implies, the audio menu contains numerous tools and functions specifically for working with audio. This may seem like a lot of new information, but many of the items are redundant ways to access familiar actions. For example, the Plugins submenu is just another way to apply effects to selected events. However, the effect is only applied to the selected event. If you're working with a full track of loops and you want to add some echo to just one loop but not the whole track, using this menu may be quicker than setting up a lot of automation. If we take a quick look at the submenus called Hit Points, Real-Time Processing, and Advanced, you'll see they contain the same tools as the various editors. However, you can interact with the tool a little differently, and you have the option to apply these functions to a specific event instead of the entire track. This is also true for most of the options and tools related to fades. There are a couple of new fade tools here, such as Remove Volume Curve. The most interesting part of the audio menu is the Process submenu. Here you'll find a number of tools and options which you can't access the same way anywhere else in Cubase. Some of the most useful functions include Gain, which allows you to adjust overall volume of an event while monitoring for any clipping. Reverse, which is an easy way to create a lot of special effects. The stereo flip process has a mode called Subtract. This uses phase cancellation to remove any signal that's panned dead center. and one common application of this is to create karaoke-style backing tracks. It's not the most glamorous work, but sooner or later, everyone gets asked to do it, and this makes it quick and painless. There are other utilities here too. You can phase reverse an event. This flips the waveform upside down to check for and eliminate phase problems. And this tool is used primarily on multi-microphone recordings like drum kits. Sometimes, differences in the mic position can introduce a slight phasing effect. Selectively applying phase reverse to different drums can often eliminate the problem. The pitch shift option allows you to transpose individual events very accurately. Resample can also be used to introduce pitch shifting effects similar to the way early sampling keyboards did. Time stretch, on the other hand, can be used to adjust the tempo and length of an event without changing its pitch. The remove DC offset function sounds understandably cryptic to many users. DC offset is not a common problem, but it's worth discussing because it can be a sneaky problem. DC offset is usually introduced by power supply issues. DC offset is easier to see than to hear. It shows up as a waveform which is not centered around the zero line or the y-axis, like this. DC offset has the nasty habit of stealing headroom from your audio, so it's not likely that you'll hear the effects until mastering. Since the audio is already offset toward the upper limit, your track will peak out too soon. This can cause distortion, which can have no obvious cause. Also, if two adjacent sections of audio have different amounts of DC offset, there will be a pop or a click when switching between them. And just like the mystery distortion, there won't be any obvious reason for it. Anytime you spot a waveform with DC offset, you should remove it. One handy way to check for DC offset is with the statistics function in the main audio menu. The DC offset amount is shown as a percentage in decibels. This window will show even very small amounts, which may be too subtle to detect visually. Another tool on the audio menu is the spectrum analyzer. This can help narrow down problem frequencies you need to eliminate. You can set this to display notes instead of hertz. Using the frequency log makes the information easier to see, then toggle between decibels and percent. You can analyze the entire clip, or use the range tool to check just a portion. If you have several audio events glued together as a part, the audio menu lets you quickly unglue them. Select the audio part and then select Dissolve Part. Bounce Selection lets you pull out just a portion of an event. Range tool to highlight an interesting section of audio. Then use Bounce Selection and replace the events. Now we can work with just the extracted section on its own. Finally, we have the option to Find Selected in Pool. Now this becomes more important as your project becomes more complex. It allows you to select an event, then in one click, open the pool with that event highlighted for editing. Let's go ahead and move on to the next chapter and take a closer look at the pool.